seconds doing this before I go back. Published October that blah blah blah. It also works with this too, by the way. But the multiplication key doesn't. Yep. And notice that only the mouse wheel thing works with Word. And this is Word 2010. Now, what about that? The keyboard works. I mean, the mouse wheel works. Hold down, and so does the other one. And like in our Explorer, it goes from ridiculously small, or ridiculously large to ridiculously small. And rats. Now there's a difference. The multiplication key does not fit it back to the standard size. There's got to be some key combination that does, but that's not it. Oh well. Lovely, remember the clicks from the smallest to the normal. Just count them when you do it the first time, and then you'll know. Which I don't. Shouldn't matter though. Ballpark is good enough. You'll either like it or you won't. Oh, I didn't notice that. It's got a zoom counter. So you don't need that. You can just go by that and take it back to 100. Where it disappears. It disappears at 100. So this is it. Okay, so each has its own little program. Side issue. I should make one video which puts a lot of the little things I've stumbled on together. But first, or rather thirdly, speak. Oh, speak of the effects of placing youngsters with adult within the what? Within the adult penal system. Excuse me. Within the adult
Litigation on classification issues has addressed the separation of, or failure to separate, adult and juvenile inmates under a number of conditions, including segregation of violent or aggressive adult inmates, separation by age, e.g., the JJDPA sight and sound separation requirements, improper separation by gender or race, and separation of inmates with infectious diseases. Separation of individuals with violent propensities. Much of the case law on classification involves claims by young or vulnerable adult inmates who were physically or sexually assaulted by inmates known to be criminally sophisticated, dangerous, violent, or aggressive. Adult inmates have the right to be protected from the threat of violence and sexual assault. If officials know of an inmate's vulnerability, they have an obligation not to act with deliberate or reckless indifference to that vulnerability. Counties or supervisory officials, as well as institutional staff, may be liable if their policies or customs, e.g., on jail overcrowding or handling of particular categories of inmates, amount to deliberate indifference to inmates' security needs.
Seeing here what this looks like. Space delete. Got two. Whoops. What did I just do? Delete that. Space delete. Now, what is this? Why does it look wrong? Much of the case law classification. Okay. Now here's how you, because you're supposed to move this whole thing over, all of it over there like that. Very simple. Highlight the whole thing and cap. There it is. This is too large. It isn't too large, but it is too large. It's in that ugly large category. So, what should I take out? Hopefully all in a row. Much of the case law, classification, claims by youngsters, vulnerable adults, inmates, physically or sexually assaulted by inmates, found to be criminally sophisticated. Like that picture before showed, a person in a wheelchair can still be in prison. So vulnerable adult inmates. Adult inmates have the right to be protected from the threat of violence or sexual assault. Let's see. Officials. I might do a dot dot dot. Much of the case law and classification involves claims by youth or vulnerable adult inmates who were physically or sexually assaulted by inmates known to be criminally sophisticated, dangerous, violent, and aggressive. Dot dot dot. If officials know of an inmate's vulnerabilities, they have an obligation not to act with deliberate or reckless indifference. Recklessness is basically doing what you shouldn't do to the point that it's the same thing as doing what you shouldn't do. Another way of putting it, but basically if you don't do what you should do and that causes something, it's the same as if you yourself did it, though indirectly. Or maybe not conscious, deliberate, premeditatedly. Like the person who closes their eyes while they're driving. That would be considered reckless. You aren't purposely hitting them, but they happen to go out into the street right then, and bam. Yep, you didn't close it for half a second either. It was like, you can count to 10. That would be a stupid game to play, but someone's liable to do it. Maybe I should edit that part out. No, I hope no one's that stupid. And if you are, yes, I said that's stupid. And I'm not taking it back. Okay. Yeah, I will do a dot 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 here. Something new I just learned about the dot dot dot. I always thought it was that. Just that. No. Oh, I see here. Wait a minute. But it's one space. Hmm. That's what he said. No, there may be something different in the way Word does it. I'll let this stand. Okay. If officials know of an inmate's vulnerability, on second thought, I think I'll stick with what I was directly told. Period, space, period, space, period, space. That's the proper dot, dot, dot. I don't know. I'll just stay with that. At least I can say, well, you told us the other week that such and such. And Word isn't saying it's wrong, so I really don't have a leg to stand on if I don't do it the way he said. Why am I placing a period? They didn't put a period, so why am I putting a period? Because I think they're wrong, but it's still their comment. It's their comment to be wrong if they want. Oh no, they did. I just didn't put their C on there. There's a period there. Hmm. Maybe I should put a dot 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 at the end. Matter of fact, I will. Why? I mean, come on. That's why. That's still large. But 7, I think it's like the outer limits. Very outer limits. In conclusion, right, adult penal system. Yeah, in conclusion, we are placing youngsters in a position they are ill-equipped to handle. Being no adult situations. No. Situations. Yeah, there we go. Adult situations years before they are really of age. We are treating them as adults in 6 are when denying them all the advantages this should imply. I only try, is that the way to put it? Yeah, whatever. Place them on trial as adults, but we also make them to be in prison with adult inmates. When we do this, we are responsible for what follows. Child may have been a perpetrator. Totally wrong spelling, but that is. Church isn't only original offense that we are causing happen to neighborhood are young in the ages of 15 in 15 and lower. And lower. The ages of that are as young as 14. I'll say the actual age here. This is a conclusion. It's like to bite more. Let's see. As young as 13. 13. We could have taken the time, effort, and expense to create a third justice system. But instead we blindly hand them over the adults and wash. We are still response able in this situation. This therefore makes us also responsible for the results. Now, where was I? Wait a minute, what are those extra things that I put there? I'll take all of those out. I don't think so. There we go. 6. And there's 7. Okay, now, any other basic quirk to it? How many references do I have? That's a 2000. That's a 2000, that's all the same reference. And I can put the references later. Well, I'm at later now. I'm at the point where I'm wanting to listen to it and see how it reads. There's another second reference. That's a clear one. There's another one in here somewhere. I'll find it later. I'm at the later. I could be looking for it while at display. Let's see here. I'll hit a dot at the end. Okay.
In our juvenile detention centers we have the ability to process and restrain the actions of the minors of the society. With this system and the tools it provides, we have managed to handle the youngsters we have had for decades. Now, with the emergence in our media of youngsters who have allegedly performed criminal acts associated with adults, this system has been deemed insufficient to handle these new cases. We have, instead, turned to using the full forces of our adult penal system instead. At the very same time that we do this, we still impose limits on them as children in every other area. This is a governmental form of child abuse and not justice. The basic court system in which children are usually tried has a built-in assumption. According to Prosecuting Juveniles in Adult Court by Malcolm C. Young and Jenny Gainsborough, 2000, the premise of using a juvenile system is that children are developmentally different from adults, and thus are more amenable to treatment and rehabilitation. Children are considered more subject to change than adults. This is the basis on which we have treated them differently, assuming there is greater reason for hope that they will change with guidance. According to the same article by Malcolm C. Young and Jenny Gainsborough, 2000, murder by the young stayed at a level rate for 10 years UNTIL 1985. After this point there was a sharp increase leading up to 1993 when it peaked. They point out that some criminologists argued that this peak was a result of various wars by drug cartels that employed youths for their purposes. Now, even preteen children are being tried completely as adults when accused of some crimes. It should be remembered that these children have been accused of crimes and not convicted when the decision to try them as adults is made. It would seem that they would be less able to defend themselves in court than an adult would be, particularly at ages such as 13. They are It would seem that they would be less able to defend themselves in court than an adult would be, particularly at ages such as 13. They are faced with the full force of the adult penal system without ever having learned about it in school. There are not only more waivers which bring them into the adult system, but some cases are mandated to be sent to the adult system without having been reviewed for waiver. There is little effort to reform them in this system, but mainly the intent to inflict punishment. Not all of these cases have to do with violent crime. Some may be as small a public disorder, but still be placed on a permanent adult record before the offender is even 14 years old. This is what we have done and are doing at this time. It is being done as if the only choices are to treat them completely as a child or completely as an adult. There is a third way. We could make a new third system from scratch, or add some abilities to the juvenile system to better address their situations. The first problem with this system, or lack of a system, is that it isolates these youths from all the resources the juvenile system could provide. Even if these were made available to them, it would have to be given while they are in adult incarceration. This has the effect of taking away most of the opportunities they would have had to develop and prosper as contributing members of society. This reduces or eliminates the education experience for them. Since they can be convicted before high school, they may spend all the years of this time in jail instead of learning the lessons school would provide. This could be provided for them while incarcerated, but there is no way this segregated form of education will compare to even the least capable public high schools. There is a second problem caused by this practice of punishing children as adults. Not only are they missing out on an education that could place them in a good standing to excel in any future career, but they are also losing the chance to develop their interpersonal skills. During adolescence there is a gradual change that takes place as a person develops from being a child with childlike needs, goals, and relationships to having the insights and skills to peruse more complex issues. There is much to learn in public education that is not taught by the teachers. Even without meaning to, each child is learning social behaviors that will make it easier for them to associate with their peers as they pursue their life goals. Depriving them of this chance at this critical period is something from which they may never recover. They may not even be aware of the harm enough to try to. This is because the life imprisonment will place them as will be the only adolescence they know. The effect of this alternate form of raising children, which it still is, would seem to have little hope of making things better for them or society. This would to some degree happen in the juvenile system as well, but in the adult system, there is little to no chance of it not dominating their adolescent years. Thirdly, there is the issue of the growing environment. The children, who are tried, convicted and sentenced as adults tend to be incarcerated with adults. Even in states where there is a separate incarceration facility for youths, there can be a spillover into the adult population. When this happens, they tend to be in the situation of facing people who are much more mentally and physically developed than they are. In these cases, they are faced with individual criminals who are far stronger than themselves. To some extent, this would be like placing females in a male prison. We might never place a female in this desperately outmatched situation as norm, but we apparently have little problem when placing 15-year-old and younger males in it. The results of creating this unsupervised situation have little chance of being good. In a report called Juveniles in Adult Prisons and Jails, James Austin Ph.D., Kelly Dedal Johnson Ph.D., Maria Gregorius, M.A., 2000, speak of the effects of placing youngsters within the adult penal system. Much of the case law on classification involves claims by young or vulnerable adult inmates who were physically or sexually assaulted by inmates known to be criminally sophisticated, dangerous, violent, or aggressive. If officials know of an inmate's vulnerability, they have an obligation not to act with deliberate or reckless indifference to that vulnerability. Counties or supervisory officials, as well as institutional staff, may be liable if their policies or customs, e.g., on jail overcrowding or handling of particular categories of inmates, amount to deliberate indifference to inmates' security needs. In conclusion, we are placing youngsters in a position which they are equipped to handle adult situations years before they are really of age. We are treating them as adults when it suits our needs, but denying them all the advantages this should imply. We not only place them on trial as adults, but we also commit them to being imprisoned with adult inmates. When we do this, we are responsible for what follows. The child may have been the perpetrator of the original offense, but we are causing these new situations to happen to people who are as young as 13. We could have taken the time, effort, and expense to create a third justice system for them, but instead we blindly hand them over to the adult system and wash our hands of it. We still responsible in this situation. This, therefore, makes us also responsible for the results.